Sometimes when I'm thinking about us, before we got lost and we parted, back to back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break, I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight, this time we're not safe and sound, not safe and sound. Back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break, I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight, this time we're not safe and sound, not safe and sound. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the live... Shoot. Wrong intro. Welcome to the FPV News. That's what it is.
It is the live
Hi,
FPV
Blunty.
News. Technically correct.
Yeah, it's the FPV News. Welcome to the live stream. No, that was right. But then I was going to say not FPV News because I don't know. It's the COVID brain. How long do I get to blame just my normal forgetfulness and, just being a fuck up on COVID? What's the scientifically 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 2 years, the rest of my life?
Yeah, I think you get to decide that one.
You go straight from sorry, I have COVID, I had COVID and I still haven't quite recovered, to I have dementia, and then just that's it. It's over. Just. Okay, good. Okay, we've got that. You gotta. No, not gonna riff with me on that. All right, fair enough. I mean, you have the ultimate excuse for being absent-minded, although you don't seem very absent-minded. The stereotype of cannabis users is, that they're but yes. You seem pretty mentally sharp, pretty much all the time.
Yeah, I think I don't know why that stereotype really exists. I guess I sort of know why, but it's all short term. I don't have any problem with longer term stuff. So
does that mean that there are times when you are more or less intoxicated? That's not the right word for it.
Not really.
Yeah, I got that vibe.
At this point, not really. Yeah.
Yeah. It's your baseline. Well, yeah. we're all throwing stereotypes today. I'm throwing the stereotype that you have to stop blaming COVID for things eventually. I'm just going to keep riding it. And, yours is a little more positive. Fair enough. But one stereotype we are not going to shirk is the stereotype that we're going to tell people about developments in the news in the world of FPV, because that's what
true.
we're here for.
God, how obvious of us. We're going to just do the news. God.
If we were hipsters, we'd be like, we're not doing the news like you expect us to. But we're not hipsters. We're just losers who do what's expected of us and deliver quality content week after week. Welcome to the live stream, everybody. Yeah, just go right in, Blunty. Let's go right in.
Oh, snap. We're going to go right in.
We're going right in.
Right.
Public service announcements. Bam.
First up, we got a PSA. And the first PSA is brought to you by you, which I've seen or I saw around, but I was so happy that you made a video. I didn't have to dig up the info for it. I appreciate all that. There's that issue with ExpressLRS 3.0 that you might have, and there's a lovely video to help you with a bad size given error.
Yeah, bad size given. I ran into this when I was making my ExpressLRS 3.0 update video several weeks ago, and tried to flash my module and it wouldn't flash. And I assumed it was my mistake, and I played with it and tried various different things and couldn't get it to flash. And then Captain Bry was like, nope, that's a bug. And now there's a fix for it. So if you're having trouble flashing ExpressLRS 3.0 and it keeps saying bad size given, or it keeps saying file too large or something like that, this is the fix. I made a video about it. It's not that complicated to fix. It's just a little annoying little thing. And, you know.
Just a quick note, that can also mean you're trying to flash your transmitter firmware to your receiver. So if you have this on a receiver, it's going to say bad size because it's too big, because it's your transmitter firmware. So just also note that. But yes, this is definitely a new issue. So.
Make sure you're flashing the right firmware, first of all. But if you're definitely, and I triple checked too, just because I was like, I'm going to hit it go. I'm going to hit go. And if this is actually the wrong file, I'm going to be screwed. But there we go. So, that's the only PSA we've got today. And now we go into news about the GoPro Hero 11, which is releasing tomorrow. I will be going to, I actually have a dentist appointment at like 8:30 in the morning. And I'm going to go straight from there to Best Buy and try to buy a Hero 11. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think that'll be possible. It seems like that's going to be possible. So we talked last week about the Hero 11 and the Hero 11 Mini. We weren't sure if the Mini was real, but it looked legit. And now already we've got a launch tomorrow. GoPro came out a couple days ago and was like, hey, it's coming. And keen observers might realize that this is the same date the DJI Action 3 is coming out. So it'll be kind of an interesting day tomorrow.
Yeah, GoPro's like throwing some shade, right?
Yeah, I think so. It does seem to be the case based on their announcement dates and times and stuff. So we got the... Go ahead.
I remember GoPro did the same thing with the release of the GoPro drone. I don't even remember the name of the GoPro drone. You remember they came out with a drone that was competing with the DJI drone? And they had
Dasta in the Discord was telling me about this earlier. I hadn't heard of it, but yeah, GoPro released their drone, and then they put it in a backpack, and they were proud to pull it out of a backpack as it fit in the backpack. And then the next day, DJI came on stage, and they set a backpack down, and then they pulled their drone out of their pocket.
Ooh. So there's a history of shade between these companies. Yeah, I remember that. Everybody was waiting for DJI to drop this drone, and GoPro, I think if my recollection is right, GoPro tried to upstage them by releasing one day early, and DJI just destroyed them because their drone was way better. The GoPro drone was not very good.
It definitely seemed like a stay in your lane situation. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm wondering how this will be comparatively. Like, you know, they're stepping this Action 3 back up to the same size as the GoPros, and they're trying to compete, and it'll be interesting to see. So we do have a picture here of a box that was released. It's not the same box you'll buy. We've got that one just under it. The one you'll find at the store is just under it. But it looks like these are the ones they send to creators. They've got a new product called the Gumby. I've also got a patent link for that, and that's kind of what makes it seem more legit. But if you see, there's some specs here that are kind of interesting. One thing we know about this, just as a base idea, is the sensor seems to be larger, as they advertise 27 megapixels over 23 of the Hero 10. But the other thing that we're seeing here is Hypersmooth 5, so we get some upgrades there. It says a new larger sensor, but interestingly, it says 8x7. I'm not sure how many people can see that, but it says 8x7 on the new larger sensor.
Yeah, like right here.
Yeah, so it seems like, that would be 4 by 3.5, right? Like, if that's a correct like
Yeah,
dimension.
that's the dimension. Does anybody in the chat know if an 8x7 sensor is? I mean, because like presumably GoPro sourced this. They don't fab it themselves, right? Who makes an 8x7 sensor? Is that even a thing?
Yeah, I don't know. I asked some people earlier, so definitely some people were talking about it in chat, and nobody was really sure if they could even source one. It's just weird that it definitely says it on that box. So maybe it's a pre-release, or maybe it's mislabeled or something.
Could be a typo.
But the interesting thing next to it is normally we see super view on these boxes, but we've got a new term. It looks like the super view symbol, but they're calling it hyper view. So, again, if this is legit, we don't know 100%, but it does seem that way. Hyperview could possibly use this different sensor size to do some different things. Again, Datasa in the chat we were talking earlier with some other folks, and if you think about it, you could possibly use that the vertical room on the sensor to do better image stabilization, right? Achieve some of the things you really couldn't. You were kind of cheating out with some of the super view stuff.
Yeah.
So, interesting.
In the past, GoPro has used hyper prefix for things like hyperlapse. And GoPro's not the only one who uses the term hyperlapse, which refers to sort of it's almost like a time lapse, right? But it's a long time lapse of a moving subject. I wonder if hyperview is something like that. Like maybe a hyperview is a panoramic, like you do with your phone, where you scale it sideways and they make a panoramic. I don't know. I'm just looking at the icon and thinking about what that could possibly mean.
Yeah, I think it's the same icon as the super view symbol. I might be wrong.
Yeah. Okay.
You're
probably right.
It's also the fact that we're missing a super view symbol there, right?
Yeah.
So we don't.
Good point.
And normally they would advertise that. So I feel like that in combination seems like it's their new, whatever it is, maybe a new version of that. But we will see tomorrow. I mean, we're just speculating because it's fun, but we'll see this tomorrow.
Yeah.
Now the other thing.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the other thing we think is that it seems like the rumor is, we've got the Mini coming too. We know the Mini's coming. So the Mini, we think, is 126 grams from what we've heard. And that's the rumor. And then also we talked before, I think on the last episode, that we also are pretty sure, and somebody in the chat had said they saw, Vanover had said that he had a Session 6, so he was working with GoPro on it. We're hearing now that is a 70-gram camera. So if that's accurate,
I mean that sounds very.
That's where we want this. That's where we want the session. So
yeah,
it's kind of interesting. If that won't be coming tomorrow, but that's in testing, presumably from good sources. Hopefully that is legit.
Yeah, the Hero 11 to me, I'm thinking like a lot of people who are buying a new GoPro might get an 11 over a 10, but as far as FPV pilots, it feels like. There isn't as compelling a reason to go here. The main thing that it seems to bring, I mean, it's got a larger sensor, and that's got some advantages. It's got 10-bit output, which is great if you're doing high-end color grading. So maybe for some of the cinematic people, you go ahead.
Yeah, they list 10-bit color like the Action 3, which is interesting. That was one of the things that was in the leak of the Action 3. We're presuming that's still correct. It was 10-bit color. So I've heard there's different versions of it. I don't know how accurate that is. And I've also heard that, obviously it'll be interesting to see where they set it by default, like if it's on or if it's off, because it might.
Oh, surely it's off.
Yeah, I would hope so, right?
Yeah. Because most people don't need. So for those who don't know, 8-bit color means you have 8 bits of resolution for each color. I would say 8 by 3, right? Red, green, blue. 10-bit means you have 10 bits. And it means that if you're doing color grading, where you're really pushing the color one direction or the other, you're trying to do some extreme grading, then 10-bit color gives you a lot more latitude. The other thing 10-bit color enables is that you can shoot in a log color profile. And again, it gives you a lot more flexibility with what you can do in terms of changing the exposure and changing the color after the fact. It makes your files a lot larger, and you need a higher bit rate to really make the best of it. But if they're going to do 10-bit, they're probably going to do it right. And for people who want to do more aggressive color grading, it's really huge.
Yeah.
The pros all want 10-bit.
If this, if that's to be believed, and then the Action 3 also, is 10-bit, that was kind of one of their features that would separate them. And it's kind of interesting to see GoPro squeezing that gap in. So as we would expect, GoPro's up on top of that stuff. So
Yeah. So I still think that, so let's talk about this from the FPV pilot's perspective. I dare say a lot of FPV pilots who aren't professionals don't give a damn about 10-bit. And they're going to be thinking mostly about durability, image quality, price, and size. And it seems like the Hero 11, it seems like everybody who's currently running a Hero 9, a 10, or maybe might run an 11 is going to pick the Hero 11 Mini instead because it saves weight. And most FPV pilots are willing to give up the screens because that's going to improve durability, and we'll just use our phones or whatever. So it seems like the 11 Mini is where it's going to be at for FPV pilots, or the new Session, which we don't know anything about yet, but it's going to be even smaller and lighter.
Yeah. It seems definitely to be the case. I mean, the Mini's like basically just free weight, right? And it seems like it's designed not like the Bones was. It seems like it's designed like actually with the proper GoPro shell and design. One thing I'm interested to see is when people open the Hero 11, is the Hero 11 going to have that shorter board? Or is the Hero 11 going to, like, did they
when
make
they
two
do a
boards?
teardown? Yeah.
Or if you just open a Hero 11, can you make a mini Hero 11 easy with a big Hero? You know what I mean?
Were they smart about how they designed the 11 so that they could put the same electronics in a different size case, and then somehow, surely they didn't just have wasted space in the 11 that isn't there in the
but
Mini.
I wonder if they found a way to pack like other components over there, or maybe that's where the battery is, and they found a way. I don't know exactly what they're doing, but interesting to consider. So.
Yeah. BJJ FPV says, live. Please videos talking about the issues, please. Well, are we missing issues in the chat because we're so entertained by talking to each other? Is there something going on in the chat that we're supposed to be? Oh, there's issues in the chat. I hate to miss any issues. I think this is the first time, I'm scrolling the chat, but I think mostly. I think this is the first time when a new GoPro has released since, I don't know, certainly going back to the 7 or the 8. Every single GoPro release has been like, well, okay, that's cool, but for FPV, it's not that much better than what came before it. In fact, it's kind of worse because it's bigger and heavier. The 7 was good. The 8 was bigger and heavier and a little better, and then everything else gets bigger and heavier and a little better image quality, but bigger and heavier. And the 11 is the first time in years that a release from GoPro has made me go, oh, this is for us. This is exciting. Ironically, it's about the same weight as a 7, so.
Right, but it is just free weight for a better camera, which is nice.
Yeah, that's exciting. Yeah. We are not saying much. Go ahead.
Also, I just want to say one other thing. I want to point out, we talked about before, this has 2 sets of clips on it. So we talked before about those GoPro clips that fold down. This has 2 sets of clips, and from my understanding, those are about 7 to 8 grams a piece for the sets. So if that's the case, then this will be a 110-gram camera by just removing the clips.
Respectable. Yeah. Completely respectable. No, we're not really talking much about the Osmo, are we, Blunty? We're talking about the GoPros.
No, because there's not much real good info.
Yeah, and
there wasn't proper leaks, and we'll find out from DJI tomorrow. But DJI hasn't leaked it at all, like they've leaked everything else. So
why they leak everything? I'm shocked that there hasn't been a leak. It must not be any good.
I don't know what's going on with it, but I'm interested to see.
I think that, and I've said this before, but I have to get it out. I think DJI really has their work set out for them in order to beat GoPro. Their action cameras have just been like, if GoPro is S tier, then DJI has been like B tier, I would say.
There's still a lot of people who, regardless of the caveats, are really happy with the Action 2. I'll say
that is true. The Action 2 actually probably is like A tier or maybe A plus. I'm not sure it's S tier because of the form factor, because of the durability, not because of the image quality. And if if GoPro comes out with a 70-gram session, the Action 2 is it's point. I mean, we have to see it before we say for sure. But I feel like I would wager it's going to just make the Action 2 pointless.
Right, and the other point here is that GoPro is stepping into the realm, or DJI is stepping into the realm of GoPro with the larger, going back to that Osmo form factor, the Action form factor. Yeah. They're trying to compete directly. They're not trying to niche out like they were before with the Action 2. So it'll be interesting to see in direct competition where people land.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
All right.
Let's, Blunty, I realized that there's an issue that we didn't mention in the PSAs. We'll come back to it because he's just about to segue into DJI. So let's go with your segue. We didn't cover the Walksnail firmware getting pulled. Thank you in the chat from L. Leston for mentioning that. We should probably mention that before the end of the stream.
Okay.
Okay. But let's go ahead. Let's go ahead with your segue.
All right. So next up, we've got DJI. Content creators are telling us that DJI Goggles 2 will have backwards compatibility. We got we got a message from Drew Camden.
Yeah, let's bring up this message from Drew. For once, we get to know, Blunty. we get to know.
And then also Nurk posted a short about it, which are basically the same message. I was also hearing through direct messages from other people that other people are hearing this from their reps as well.
Yeah.
So basically what we're getting is that DJI has said that they plan to work on backwards compatibility. They are actively working on
it.
Between the Goggles 2 and older versions of the Air unit. They are targeting this release in September. There is no official date, and it would not consider it a guarantee.
Yeah. Sorry, you said September. December is what.
December. But there's no official date, and I wouldn't consider it guaranteed until it happens.
Yeah.
What I would say is, doesn't change much to me. I think we're basically in the same position where we were before.
Before they said this, it was like I would give the odds at like 15% likely. Now that they've said this, I would give the odds at 52% likely, 55%. I mean, I think the odds of it happening have gone up when actual people from within DJI say it's going to happen. If there's silence or if they say it's not going to happen, the odds go down.
I think
that's my take.
My take on this is that 3 months is enough to get everybody to forget that they care. And then the whole push will be gone behind it. So then anybody who cares later will be way less quiet or way quieter about it. It'll be way less of a hubbub because there's not a launch around it. And then it won't matter enough for them to actually have to do it.
You are right.
To me, my opinion is that I don't think this is like, I think this is literally just pushing down the line, saying, talk to us in December and maybe we'll care. Basically is how I read this. And then they were told some reps to say that to appease people through content creators, right? Because the reps are kind of like they're, hey, get this message out for us. And they just get the message out, right? The reps don't have any, none of the reps have seen the software, at least as far as we know. The reps,
the reps are marketing people, so to speak. The reps have connections to technical people, engineering, because content creators are going to ask them technical questions. But I don't think the reps really, and this is pure speculation, so take it for what it's worth. I don't think the reps really even talk directly to the engineers. I feel like the reps will ask a question of an engineering manager who will then give them the answer off the roadmap. I feel like we're very, very far from the actual people who are working on this. But you're right that the people that Paul Nurkle and Drew Camden speak to are people whose job is to manage the public perception and the public messaging. And so they've decided that it is beneficial for them to have this message be out there, and they're going to push it out there. And maybe that means it's true and it's something they're actually going to do.
Right.
And maybe, have you noticed that around the time of the release, DJI gets super communicative and super connected right about the time that they want people pushing their product. And then later they pull back a little. Maybe they don't take your calls.
Some people might remember promises from a DJI manager about the motion controller working with the Air unit. That was an interview with Nurk, I think, maybe, or Original Dobo or somebody. We got multiple other promises in those interviews that never happened about features and stuff.
Mads
the other thing
had a list of things, and Mads Tech is great because he's been with DJI since before the FPV world. Things like 10-bit color from the such and such drone, things that he said were in an actual product sheet, not just a marketing manager saying, hey, we're going to do this. There was literally product literature promising these features, never came. So go ahead.
Yeah. So the other thing I want to point out is that not only that, but we do have the other public thing we've talked about before, which is that, there was a big news story from multiple major news outlets about DJI Aeroscope signals and they asked a rep multiple times, they asked multiple reps, and DJI told them 2 separate cases, official statements that, all our aeroscope signals are encrypted. And then a hacker went in and found out, hey, they're not encrypted, and proved it. And then DJI said, okay, you were right, our aeroscope signals are not encrypted. So that was 2 major news outlets, right? Like this is like so my point is that DJI is not interested in vetting good information for you. They're interested in getting a message out that helps them in the public face, right?
And I want to sort of put some context on this bit that we're doing right now, Blunty, which is that I'll speak for myself. I feel a little bit defensive because I said, I'll believe it when I see it. Don't count your DJI chickens before they're in your hatched, right? And then DJI said, "Yay, we're going to do this." And people came to me and were like, "Oh, how does it feel to be wrong?" And I'm like, I stand by that statement today. But I think DJI should get credit for noticing that there's something that we want and saying they're going to do it. They get like this much credit. When they actually do it, they'll get this much credit from me.
Exactly.
And I'll be happy. But the statement, don't believe them until they actually do it, is just historically accurate. I'm not like shitting on DJI. I'm not being a hater. And I'm not saying they're not going to do it. I think they might do it. But I'm just saying you just don't know. And if you don't feel that way, then I think you just don't have enough experience with DJI to know how they behave.
Yes, that I would agree with that for sure. So we will remind you that I think it's still, worth sharing because again, we do not really, you can't guarantee that any of this will happen. We're just guessing on reps and stuff. So we're resharing that change.org petition that we shared last time. If you want to go sign that and add some more fuel to the fire and let remind DJI that you're still there and there's still numbers going up constantly, I think is important. Yeah, because they cared enough to put out a message.
They noticed us, and they want to appease us. They wouldn't have done this if they hadn't noticed us.
My opinion is that appeases the community. We won't get the update. If it doesn't appease the community, they'll have to do the update to actually appease us. That's
interesting.
Sort of
so we got to keep the pressure on, is what you're saying.
I think that's the case. Yeah.
I'll say one more thing, and that is that somebody said promises from DJI are like a monkey's paw. I think there's some truth to that. And what I mean by that is that when DJI says, I'm going to give you a pizza, you imagine the most delicious pizza in the world. And that may not be the pizza that DJI intends to give you. It might have pineapple on it. And DJI's like, here's the pizza. Don't you like it? And you're like, wait a minute.
If you're vague enough about the pizza, there's a lot of room to dream up your own pizza.
When they say they're going to give backwards compatibility, perhaps they will. Perhaps there will be other things that go along with it that maybe you were like, wait a minute, I didn't see that coming. I don't know. My point is, let's just wait and see.
Yes.
Let's just wait and see. And when 100%. December will come and we'll find out. Okay. But thank you, DJI, for noticing. And I hope that you deliver in the way that we all hope that you will. And when you do, I will be your biggest fan and your biggest proponent. But
100%.
You earned this skepticism, DJI, and you know it.
I'll be happy to say right now that if they actually do this update, that'll be a huge push to let us know that they do care. Like even at product releases, at least they care enough to give us new features, right? We got the 50 megabit per second update. We never expected that, right? So that was like one of those like, hey, they actually do like care enough to give us something. So I don't know. Like I think this is a good faith gesture to the community that would help go a long way when we have future discussions about DJI's support of the community. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I know there's people in DJI who are part of the FPV community who want all the things that we want. And I think sometimes those people feel a little bit bad when we shit on the company as a whole.
I don't think that's true.
No, you don't think that's true?
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think that's true. I've had a lot of private conversations with people. I was told that DJI believes we soft mounted our camera. Like on our drones. Like our actual FPV cameras were soft mounted. Who is
DJI? DJI is a giant company with lots of employees. That's the problem. I don't think you can say that there is a monolithic DJI.
Nobody on the FPV team has an understanding of FPV is what I'm saying. Because my understanding was the DJI's team's understanding of FPV was that we soft mount our cameras, and that my understanding was the air unit's design was based around that, and they were having issues in testing because of that. So I don't know how true that is, but that's a really good source that I got there. So.
Okay, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm giving him too much credit. All right.
And that, I mean, I'm just going to say the potato also kind of proves that, right? We got like they didn't know what they were doing with that potato.
I feel like the potato isn't it? You ever seen that comic of the tire swing hanging from the tree? And it's like, if engineering designed it, if customer service designed it, you know, I think the potato is an example of sort of this design by committee, where some of the people building it had really wacky out there priorities, because at the end of the day, DJI is a camera drone company and a camera company, and that's who they're cut. It's like when Spectrum builds a radio, they have to acknowledge the fact that 97.9% of their user base is fixed wing pilots. And so when they try to build a radio for FPV pilots, they make all these weird decisions that don't make sense to us, but they have to take into account their existing audience. And I think that explains a lot of what happened with the FPV drone. My
viewpoint, though, is that drone would not have been made if they were in tune enough with us to know, and then we would have gotten the Avata as the last drone, because that's what we even saw original specs of that. Like we had leaks from Osita LV. He was drawing the same Cinewhoop that we eventually got, you know, like early demos of that. But for some reason, that team went with, you know, the potato instead of going with that Cinewhoop design. And to me, that shows like a lack of understanding about the hobby. And also it shows like the first one was an FPV target, right? They targeted it and they realized after that, they were like, that doesn't make any sense. The Avata is not targeted at FPV. It's got goggles. It doesn't have FPV in the name. The goggles don't have FPV in the name. Like they stepped away. Then they went more broad. I don't know. Like I understand where you're coming from, but I feel like there was a lot of lack of understanding about like what the audience who bought that drone would want. I
think having seen people at Ken Heron's Minefield, I'm going to keep going back to this because it was a real eye-opener for me. I understood objectively that there are people out there who like the DJI FPV drone. Like I would have said, yes, of course. But seeing so many people in one place sort of loving it, I was like, wait, there really exists. DJI served a market there. It just wasn't the FPV market. And I don't think that means that no one from the FPV community is in the room. It just means there's a whole bunch of other people in the room who outvote them. That's my take. I think it's naive to assume that there's no one in the room who is from the FPV community. I mean, maybe there isn't, but
yeah, I mean, maybe that's true, but like it just I don't know. I've definitely heard a lot of stories that seem like nobody in the room can tell them what they need to know.
That may be true. That may be true.
To get this piece of information, and they're like very confused about like how to proceed.
That may be true. Being there and being listened to are two different things.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
I mean, I get what you're saying with the potato. I just don't. I feel like if we had designed that drone, if we had sat down and designed the potato, I bet there would have been a lot of changes we would have made that would have also appealed to major customers, that would have applied to us as well. That's sort of where I would go. Like everyone would have benefited from a more durable drone. Nobody would have been at a downside from the arm snapping off that thing when you hit a tree, right? And there are ways to design that thing so you didn't snap an arm off when you hit a tree. That is my personal viewpoint. Like you could have sacrificed.
Would it have affected the weight?
Oh, it's already a fat pig.
Would it have affected the weight? Would it have affected the flight time, for example? I mean, I feel like
how heavy is that thing? Like,
I mean, it's heavy.
Yeah, like I don't know that that was their main concern there. Maybe it was, but
yeah.
All right.
Let's see here. Before we go on to the next story, I want to back up and do another PSA real quick. The Walksnail 27 whatever firmware got pulled down from the website. I don't have any links for this because we didn't prep this. I'm not sure how it got overlooked, but thank you again for L. Leston for pointing it out. The reason it was pulled is because a few pilots reported unexplainable black screen, like the camera would just go black in the middle of a flight. And Walksnail was not able to reliably reproduce it, but they felt it was a serious enough issue that they pulled the firmware. So if you're flying on Walksnail firmware 27 whatever that was released last week and then suddenly got pulled down, be aware that some people have experienced black screen and, some people haven't. And some people in Facebook have said like, it's probably just somebody who doesn't know how to wire up their voltage regulator. I can tell you, I know one person who experienced this. They haven't gone public, so I'm not going to name them, but I can assure you that it's a person with ample experience building quads, flying with Walksnail. If they say that randomly and for no reason they went black screen in the middle of a flight, then it's not, they're just a dumbass. It's like worth, and that's why I think Walksnail is also taking it seriously. So unknown what will come of that. I do agree with that.
But also, like, isn't this the whole point of them testing? Like, I didn't put this up because I thought this was a test firmware, not a public firmware.
No, it had been released. I'm pretty sure it was out there.
That's total bullshit. Like
they had it in testing for 2 weeks.
Either this is not real, or they didn't test it properly. That's all that there is.
Well, then how long should it be in testing?
One person out of 1,000? Like maybe. Like I don't know. Like it should be testing long enough to catch black screening during a flight. That would be my opinion.
Yeah, maybe I don't know. Like, I mean, they're moving fast. Yeah. The firmware is in testing for a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks typically is what I think it is. From when I see it on the Rotor Riot chat, and it's available just to us and the Walksnail test pilots, to the time when they actually go, okay, it's public, is usually about 2 to 3 weeks.
All I'm going to say is even the best test pilot out there could have a undervolting BEC and not know it.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. And I don't have the deep technical details as to what happened, but they said that they thought it was a problem with the unit, and Walksnail decided to play it safe, which
Like their statement, I dug up their statement here. It says, we can't confirm whether the black screen is due to the new firmware now. We need more scenario tests to reproduce the problem. But in case causes damage, we remove new firmware. So
I mean, that's I would say that's responsible.
Yeah.
If you think you might have a situation where people are going to lose video and crash, then they pull it and you do a little more testing.
Yeah.
It may turn out to be just some random thing that only affected 2 people, and that's it. By the way, I said I know one pilot who did it. I don't think it's just one pilot who reported it. I just happen to know one of the people. And somebody else asked, "Why is this so sensitive that people don't want to go pub?" I'm like, I don't think it's a big secret, and they would be more than willing to talk about it publicly. But since I don't know if they have, I'm not going to call a bunch of attention to them. That's all.
Yeah.
So anyway, that happened. People were wondering why it got taken down. That's why. I'm sure in 2 more weeks, then they'll put up another firmware and maybe it'll be fine. Wesley Vardy confirms it's not just one person. I agree. Okay, getting back onto our regularly scheduled. What was next? Next up is the information about HDZero. We got GoPro, we got DJI, now we got HDZero. It seems like we did the same show last week. Oh, well. We got news about the HDZero goggles and the 90 FPS cameras. Where do you want to start, Blunty?
All right. So first up, so basically, there's just an update on the goggles. Ryan posted a video. The main points of that are just basically that, they're testing the goggles and everything's going all right. It's going to take longer than they expected. So they're definitely not hitting October. They don't know when they're going to release them. Hopefully before the end of the year still is the target, but they're not sure. And they're also going to do a public test like they had planned before. So at some point you'll be able to buy them supposedly for some kind of discount, and then there'll be a small amount of them available, and they'll be like beta. They should be somewhat like final internal hardware. And they'll be molded outsides, but they might not be final outside like components to it. So that should be coming soon, but they don't really have dates yet.
Here we've got Ryan demonstrating the analog module. Oh, that hurts me. Oh, God. I mean, I'm glad that they have the ability to do analog. I 100% am glad that they've done that. It's good for the community. And people will do it.
Would you rather the goggles be bigger? Like, I don't. I definitely understand why they did this. Like, because the goggles have to be bigger because there's no room inside, right?
Yeah,
it's not like there's free room they wasted. So.
I know they did. They made the right decision. It just looks so. It looks so. I don't know. You're right. They made the right decision.
You're wearing antennas and goggles on your face. Like I understand what you're saying, but it looks so crazy. It's like It's hard for me to argue. And
Is there-
DJI, you're comparing it to DJI. It's like, yeah.
Is there
Yeah,
how is
Alien.
how is it secured to the goggles? It looked like he plugged it in there. Is there an extra like retention clip?
I think the back has a clip too, yeah. Oh, no,
Yeah.
that whole piece maybe clips in.
It's got to be secure so it doesn't
around
like get knocked off.
Yeah.
I'm sure they've thought of that. They're pretty smart. I mean, it's good that it's there. It's good that it's there. They're going to be really good looking screens, I expect. And it's going to work really well with analog. They've got some work they're doing with deinterlacing and scaling. One of the things that many goggles don't do, in fact, basically all analog goggles don't do, is properly like deinterlace the analog signal. They just kind of show it interlaced, and people who come from the analog world say, oh no, there's really high-end interlacing algorithms that could do a much better job. And Carl has apparently taken that into account. And some people who've tried it have said it's the best looking analog feed they've ever seen. Not just because it's OLED screens, but because of the way they're processing the analog signal. So that sounds interesting.
That tech is currently available in the HDZero Event VRX if you wonder what it looks like.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Makes sense. It's so weird to me, Blunty, because HDZero is doing all these things that nobody else has done. But at the end of the day, I find myself wishing that the basic performance of the system was better, and I don't know. Like I wish they had a 2-watt video transmitter or something, and they could get more. Like here's the thought that I had during Sunday's live stream. When you can get a 2.5 watt Foxeer analog VTX, that's going to be 1.5-ish times the range of a 1 watt analog VTX. It's a little more than double the power is 1.4 times the range. So let's say it's 1.5 times. At some point, like you get so much output power and penetration and range from the analog that I think you start asking, is the additional price, the durability penalty of something like HDZero worth the increase in image quality? And it's just like it just never feels like HDZero knocks it out of the park and is like it always feels like there's a caveat for me. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, most people don't like it when it's said, but I think it's a racing system. So,
Interesting. It is certainly exceptional for racing, as long as the durability holds up. So we've got the goggles. Another question people have asked is, are the goggles going to have better performance?
I'm not aware of that, but
I think
as far as I know, it's
the
basic
basic
VRX.
Yeah, the basic performance of the chipset is what it is. The goggles are going to have a better screen. They're going to have a form factor, but ultimately it's not going to get you like magically more range. Ryan points out that the analog module can be screwed on hard mount if needed. And the place where it wins is the latency and the smoothness. And I just don't know how many people for whom that is the one thing they care the most about. If they did, then HDZero would be the one for them. It even beats analog in terms of its latency. It's pretty impressive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see here. What else about this? What else is in Ryan's video? Any other takeaways?
So the next, not from the goggle vid that I know of, the next video, the camera video, though, he talks a little bit about some of the things we'll talk about from the camera video, which is that they've got a 90 frames per second camera now in testing. I don't know. I think there's 1 or 2 demo units. I don't know. It wasn't super clear. He's got one, and then I think NoCal has one for testing. He tests it, and with the 90 FPS camera, it does get under analog's glass-to-glass latency because obviously analog is lower than that.
Yeah. Now this is only a 60 FPS DVR, and actually I'm not even sure. I'm not streaming at 30 FPS, so that you're not seeing the raw 90 FPS DVR here, but this is no.
Ryan has if you want to download it, Ryan has a 90 FPS video file in the description that you can download to see the actual 90 FPS. But NoCal says he can feel it, and Ryan says he can feel it for sure.
I believe it. I believe it. I think that when you're flying at that level that you just saw NoCal flying, that is exactly where consistent latency 100% makes a difference. And I think that tests like Limon's test of whether they could feel the difference in latency proves it.
Yeah, I mean, I know I can feel like on a computer monitor, I've done like blind testing on myself, and I can tell, 60 versus 90, 60 versus 100, 60 versus 120. Once I go over 120, I can't tell anything. But like that 60 versus 90 for me is super clear. It's 50% increased frame rate. So
for sure,
like it's a big jump, and you're getting that lower latency because you're delivering frames more often, and definitely is just an overall improvement, I'm sure. So that's definitely cool to see. This is a 540p. We should point that out. So you do drop the quality to get the frame rate because it's the same system, right? So so 720
you have to trade something for something.
Yeah, we're typically at 720 or I guess 1080, right? I can't remember. Is it?
I'm not convinced that in terms of actual details resolved, that the HDZero system is truly delivering 720p.
Yeah.
Like I know that the pixels, I asked Carl, and Carl assured me that 720 by whatever 1080 pixels are all there. Whatever it is, what's 720 by 12.
The image that you get definitely looks like down-res, 100%.
So my point there is,
you would guess it's not 720. I would guess it's not 720.
I'm not sure how much actual difference that 540p is going to make in terms of the actual details you can see as a pilot.
Yeah.
1280, thank you. 720 by 1280.
Couple other things to mention. So there is another mode on these cameras, or there will be. I'm not sure if it's active yet. I didn't hear that in the video, but I might have missed it. But basically, you can turn this 540 down to 60, and then get better penetration because you're sacrificing a little bit. You don't need as much bandwidth essentially. And then the other thing is similar to, lowering packet rate or something on ExpressLRS, right? Or your Crossfire. And then the other thing is they're also doing a 1080p 30 FPS camera, which we've discussed before. A 1080p 30 FPS mode that will work with the V2 censored cameras that are out. And that will allow you to do 1080p, but with 30 FPS. So I'm interested to see, we talked about how the 720 doesn't quite look like 720. I wonder what the 1080 will look like in comparison.
And I would say to me, that is exciting and interesting, but a total reserve judgment, as we've seen with Walksnail, for example. Like in my opinion, when you shift the Walksnail system from 720p to 1080p, you don't get any more actual resolvable detail. Now, whether that's their bit rate or whatever it is, it just isn't there. So simply delivering more pixels doesn't necessarily increase the quality of the image. And if it does increase the quality of the image, it's also going to decrease the range. You can't get something for nothing. Although they're giving up the frame rate. They're going down to 30 FPS.
So yeah, the idea here is all about that trade-off. So we're talking about, we're going up in resolution and we're going down in frame rate so we can get that same bandwidth requirement across the air. So
I think it's going to be really interesting to test.
And one of the things, you were just saying is like, we haven't seen a lot of like major improvements in the system. We're seeing minor improvements and cool features and stuff, but the base performance has been very similar. So these will be actual changes to performance, that'll be cool to see.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's so tough to me. Because I feel like when I fly the HDZero system back to back with analog, and I know that people get mad when I say this and disagree with me, and that's fair. I feel like I get maybe the same, maybe a little less range than a comparable analog system at the same output power.
I think that makes sense, right? Like I don't know. I think that makes sense personally.
I feel like the breakup is a little harder to fly through, which is controversial because like you can get these rolling breakups with analog that are just absolute deal breakers.
I think it depends on the analog breakup, right? Like exactly what you're saying.
I agree.
Sometimes you get static, but sometimes you get nightmare rolling, and you're like, I don't even know what's going on.
So HDZero never has rolling image, but there comes a point where you've got so many sparkles on screen that it's just you're like, okay, I'm done. And I don't know. When you compare, I wish it was just a little more.
I would also say, I wonder if the cameras have to be booted in those modes, or if there's some way they could do a dynamic change in flight and then let you get a longer range when you hit your limit.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be interesting. I don't know about
if you could take that 90 and drop it to 60 when you get at a range or something, that might be kind of cool.
Yeah.
The other things to know, real quick, just from that video, 14 millimeter wide camera still. on the 90 FPS. So it'll just be 18 millimeters tall, like those taller ones we've seen. And then there will be some available to fly at multi-GP champs, so I think alongside the goggles.
Nice.
You guys are going to be there. So
nice. It's hard not to judge the system against the other digital systems. Like if you were judging HDZero against analog, then I think if those were the only two things, then I think there would still be people who choose analog because it's more durable in a lot of cases, it's less expensive, and in theory you can get higher output power and more range without as good of an image quality. But then HDZero comes in with better image quality and better latency. But then as soon as you introduce DJI and Walksnail into the picture, now the typical pilot has a lot different considerations. So
yeah. It's just that one thing I just also want to point out, we're talking about the HDZero goggles in this segment, and hopefully that fixes one of the barriers that pilots have, right? Because
that's true.
If the pricing comes in properly, then when a new pilot looks at a premium analog goggle, before they would be looking at HDZero or HDO2, or they would be looking at Sky 04X.
Or maybe Orca.
Or maybe Orca. And now they're going to be considering that I can spend maybe the same amount of money or $50 more, and I can have built-in digital system into the goggles that I'm already purchasing with analog as well. Right?
Well,
so I think that could be a big draw for people, right? And
those
better analog performance.
Those HDZero goggles are going to be HDZero for when you're racing. You're going to be able to put an analog module on the side of them and have potentially the best analog signal, the best analog processing of any goggle. Yeah. And if Walksnail comes through on their ground station unit that they said they were making, you could even use your Walksnail receiver by plugging an HDMI cable into it. I feel like the HDZero goggles in some ways are more exciting to me than the whole HDZero system.
Yes.
Yeah,
because it basically gives you digital for free or very cheap if they come in where their goal is for the target price.
You shall see.
So it'll be interesting to see where the private test price is, and then what everybody thinks. So
MC's Creations has a good point. I was thinking about this week. MC's Creations says HDZero needs more companies making stuff, and HDZero VTX from Russia FPV would be sweet. I was thinking today, Blunty, this week, HDZero has said that they want to not open source, but they did say open source. They want other manufacturers making hardware with their chipset in it. They want a Foxier HDZero VTX. They want a Rush. They want a TBS unified digital VTX with HDZero in it. And it hasn't happened. And here's what I thought, Blunty. Look at what happened with ExpressLRS. How gosh dang fast did manufacturers start making ExpressLRS hardware? It was preposterous, right? And what that says to me is that when manufacturers feel there's an opportunity for them to make a buck, they will jump on this shit.
For sure.
And then does that imply that the inverse is true, or the converse, I'm not sure which, that the reason that nobody is making HDZero video transmitters other than HDZero is that there's no money for them in it?
No. It's because it's not open yet.
What do you mean?
It's because you can't just talk to them and get it. You can't buy chips off the shelf. You have to work with HDZero to build a design, go with Carl, go back and forth, make sure exactly what you're going to make, to agree on the product, produce the product, and ship it out. And you have to order the chips when you do that. It's not
Carl
easy to do.
Making it too hard for people to do that.
100%.
Because he wants quality, obviously.
Yes, I've heard that from multiple vendors now, that they have tried to work with HDZero, and they've been stalled for months and months and months and months and never got a product out. And to me, that's part of why they're doing open. That's the whole point of this, is like, we don't want to do any of that shit. We just want to make this open, give you all the information you need, sell you chips, and then we're done with this. And hopefully that's where we get. That's where we need to get to. And then my opinion is, once we get there, then you'll see the flood, right? Then you'll see the surge of like one or two people make a design, whether it's open or whether it's one company, a bunch of people clone that design, and then that's where we start to get the spread of like HDZero hardware at third-party manufacturers.
Well,
that's what I would assume, right?
Are we going to end up in the same situation where we get some shitty ones that break and don't work, and you have to avoid them?
That's the nature of open source hardware, right? Like, nobody's restricting who's making what. It's not my understanding. And to me, if you do restrict it, it's going to be worse, because then everybody's going to be waiting on somebody, and there's going to be a team that has to approve stuff, and there's going to be some kind of like, I don't know. It seems like that would be a nightmare, and it's going to turn a lot of manufacturers off. If you have to work through all these hoops, that already have not been going well for the people I've talked to. We saw a Race V2 copy VTX announced how long ago that never came out. We saw like I don't know. I know privately somebody was trying to build a Whoop like 8, 9, 10 months ago, and it never happened. Like, there's just a lot of like, yeah. I want to see those chips available on DigiKey or something easy to get. Right.
All right. Before we're more than halfway through the show, Blunty, but it's time for us to do our plugs. Plug. We got a little bit of stuff after the plugs. I guess we're going to go long today, but hey, whatever.
Be all right.
News is what they. Remember what you said to me before the stream? It's a little light today. I was like, we'll be fine.
Yeah. Turns out we can talk about stuff.
We can.
Who would have known?
I'm going to talk about your website. ItsBlunty.com. ItsBlunty.com is Blunty's website where you can. He's got some reference stuff up here, but mostly you can join his Discord server. But mostly what I want to point out is that he has a Patreon and he does one-on-one troubleshooting calls. If you want somebody to jump on a Zoom call with you or something at a very reasonable rate, Blunty is happy to do it. ItsBlunty.com is that website.
Yeah, and we can't forget about FPVKnowItAll.com, which is your website, where you can go and find out about the ultimate FPV shopping list, and you can get product recommendations and links to anything that you need to buy for any kind of product or project in the FPV world. At least pretty much curated by more than just you, by a few people who've got you in mind.
Yeah. We also want to tell you about SearchFPV.com, which is a website I'm working on with Eirik Toft is the developer. It is a multi-store FPV search engine where you can search for, pretty much whatever you want. Let's search for DJI. Oh, that didn't go well. What happened? Is it broken? Damn it. Great. Good time for the website to break.
Good time.
Well, it usually works. There we go. Searches multiple stores, show you the price, shows you if it's in stock or not, and just help you do your product searching. And is there one more thing, Blunty? Oh, yeah.
There is. The Joshua Bardwell live stream clips channel. You can find clips from the Q&As that you do on Sundays and Mondays, or you can find clips from the news that you do on Tuesdays. And I clip those out and I organize them all for people so they can get their updates. Sometimes a little bit after the fact, but always some cool stuff that a lot of people seem to miss. So I'm glad we get to post them.
Well, I'm glad because I just talk for 2 hours during the live streams. And I look at this and I go, wow, there's some great content in those live streams. And if you're not the kind of person who wants to sit there for 2 hours and listen to a whole live stream, then get over there and subscribe. We got just over 5K subscribers. We need that number to get higher. Get over there and subscribe and catch up on those. Okay, plugs out of the way. We paid the bills, as they say, Blunty. Let's get back to the news.
All right. Next up, some news from the law side of things that people might be interested in. So we've talked before about the FAA requirements for compliance for drones and stuff for remote ID, and manufacturers had a manufacturer date that they had to meet compliance by. Well, turns out that some manufacturers have shown up on that list just before the compliance date. So at least some people were working to do that. And surprise, surprise, most of these entries are DJI. So a lot of DJI drones have been updated with the DJI Fly app, from what I understand, for Japan remote ID, but also for future remote ID in the United States, and have been accepted. As well as Wingtra, which seems to be a module that you fit on. And then also the next page is a couple other modules that are expressive chips. Seems like they're sort of base entries for these drones. So, these are the approved drones so far. We'll see a lot more get added. But otherwise, we also got a delay in enforcement. So we talked about how there might be a pushback on that date because it seemed like the date was coming real fast and nobody was ready. So the FAA was like, hey, we can't push the date back because the date's in law, so we're not going to do anything to you. Don't worry. That's basically what this says. It says, hey, December 16th is your new date. If it's before then, we're not going to enforce anything. So get your shit together, and then...
This is an example of what we talked about previously, that the way that federal regulations and enforcement goes is that there's a law that says make a regulation, and then there's a regulation, and then the enforcement agency just says, nah, just so you know, we're not doing that. And then they just do whatever they want. To some degree. Obviously, if they go too far, you could sue them. But here's a case where they just said, yeah, I know the law says the 22nd, but we're just not going to do that till December. Now, this doesn't affect FPV pilots at all, only manufacturers. It only affects pilots in as much as we buy bind and flies from manufacturers.
Yeah, any manufacturers who are scrambling because the ASTM guidelines were not published soon enough, that was pretty close, and who weren't ready by the September 16th date, which is in 3 days, we'll have, till December to get those together and submit their means of compliance to the FAA. We should see that list getting filled out more and more, so we see more approved drones and manufacturers on that list. As obviously it's 3 days from now, and there's only like however many, so that's not enough. So the FAA was like, we have to do this. There's not a lot of choice.
What does it mean if I own one of the drones that's on that list? What does it mean if I own a drone and it's not on that list, Blunty?
Yeah, well, if you own a drone and it is on that list, then that means when remote ID starts, you'll be able to hit a button on your phone or your app, and then you'll be compliant with remote ID rules. If you
it means your drone is going to broadcast the required information, and it basically means you don't need to think about it at all. Unless you're like, wait, I feel this violates my privacy. Then you might think about what it's broadcasting. But if you're just like, I will comply with regulations, then the good news is if you own one of those drones, you don't have to really think about it at all. The DJI, Daddy DJI has got you in their loving arms, and they'll take care of it.
We don't,
so
I'll just point out, we don't know for sure how the older drones will work out. We've only got, 8 or 9 of the DJI drones here, so there may be like an older set that will need modules. If your drone is not on the list at the time remote ID starts, then you'll have to add a broadcast module to your drone.
Right.
And that'll be how you comply with
that's the takeaway for all FPV pilots buying self-built drones as well. Is that you would be, because people say, what if I have an older DJI drone and it's not on this list? Or people say, what if I have a self-built drone? The FAA expects you to get a remote ID module and put it on that drone. That's your means of compliance.
And just a reminder, that's September 16th, 2023. So you definitely got a long time. Yeah.
Right. Especially a good thing because as far as I know, there is currently no such module that anyone could buy. So
that is correct. Yeah,
it's only manufacturers who need to comply in December of this year. So, okay. Yeah. Well, it's nice for manufacturers that got pushed back. Get a little reprieve there. Next up, we have some discussion of the ImmersionRC RF power meter. And this is super exciting. Let me just pull this up first of all. ImmersionRC RF power meter. In case people don't know what this is, an RF power meter is like a lab grade RF power meter is tens of thousands of dollars. Lab calibrated, super expensive, maybe single digit thousands, but I would guess 10 to 20, maybe $30,000. And obviously a typical FPV hobbyist isn't going to have that. So the RF power meter is an inexpensive device that is good enough for hobbyists in terms of like, is my video, when I change my video transmitter from 200 milliwatts to 600 milliwatts, is it actually outputting more power? Yes. And like, if I'm at a race, am I roughly at 25 milliwatts? Yes. It's not lab grade, but it's only $100, which is bargain for. But some people have questioned, number one, how accurate it is, and number two, whether it works with digital signals like DJI or HDZero.
Yeah. I'll just point out that the unit he has, I believe, is $25,000 that he's testing on.
That's what he said.
So, yeah, there are definitely more cheaper units that have varying levels of calibration and stuff. But just so you know,
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of money to actually do proper testing. So, these are some good comparisons. So
Tony Cake from ImmersionRC did this comparison where he compared an HDZero VTX and he measured on his $25,000 RF gear and he measured on his little $100 power meter to see how accurate they are. And frankly, you would expect them to be accurate because he uses the $25,000 thing to calibrate the $100 things. So it stands to reason they should match, but you can see here that they basically did match within a fairly close range. I think he said 0.8 dB, which is pretty dang good for a $100 piece of equipment.
Yeah, I think we kind of would expect, I mean, I might be wrong, but I think we kind of would expect HDZero to work pretty similar to analog on a power meter, which is what we're seeing there. He mentions at the bottom, next step is DJI, which is a bitch because transmitter power is dynamic. So it'll be
Yes.
interesting to see if they could patch in a mode that can monitor DJI somehow and give you good info about that. It'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, the way you would typically, I mean, I don't know. I won't say that. I'm talking out my ass. I would like to say that previously someone tested HDZero using the power meter and found that it didn't read, that it was not reading correctly, and criticized the power meter. And Carl from HDZero showed on an expensive lab grade thing that it was accurate, that their VTX was outputting the power it said it was. And some people said, oh, the ImmersionRC power meter is accurate. And Tony said, well, come on, Carl from HDZero shows that his VTX is accurate, of course he's going to show that his VTX is accurate. It's fair. I would also like to say, though, in this case, we have Tony from ImmersionRC showing that his meter is accurate. Well, of course he's going to show that. So I believe that the meter is accurate. I believe that the HDZero VTX outputs the power it says it does. But this isn't quite the same as independent third-party testing, to be fair. So
yeah, absolutely. If anybody's got a spectrum analyzer and you can analyze the power meter, we'd be happy to show your results as well.
Yeah. So. Anybody out there who's just sitting around with a $25,000 power meter?
Well, Sandor DeBrunner's got a good one, right? Maybe he could do this.
I don't know. Sandor DeBrunner has a spectrum analyzer. Yeah. I don't know if it actually. So there are tools out there that are.
If it actually emits a proper power to benchmark against, sort of thing,
there's tools out there that are accurate across the spectrum, but maybe the absolute power they measure is not precise. This is a whole world in which I know enough to back away slowly. Anyway, ImmersionRC RF power meter is a good little tool and well worth using. So that's what we'll take away from that. What's next, Blunty?
Next up, we've got an event announcement. So you can know about an event you might want to go to, and that is the Street League Championship. Some people might know about the Street League series that has been going on, and it's time for the finalists of Season 1 to compete in the Street League Championship. So on September 23rd through the 25th, this is your lineup. So we got Mari, people might know from DRL, and a couple other pilots there people might be familiar with.
What is Street League for those who don't know, Blunty? Just briefly.
Street League is basically sort of like hobby DRL, I guess. I don't know the best way to put it, but basically it's they make a spec quad. Here you go. They make a spec quad and basically follow these dimensions for the quads, and they're essentially like a DRL Racer 4 or similar in specs. They're nice and heavy, so 1,280 gram all up weight with everything included. 7-inch props, 5S batteries, and you put a throttle and motor output limit in. So. Yeah. So
if you have looked at DRL and thought, I would really like to race a quad like the DRL Racer 4, then this is the spec league for you. And if you missed out on this year, because of course they're going into the championships, get involved and start building, and maybe next year will be your year.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that's coming up.
Yeah. If you're around Ohio, check it out.
Next up, we got a cinematic of the week, Blunty, and you told me that this was one of the best ones that you had ever seen. Is that true?
It is true. It is true. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
I haven't seen it yet. So I'm going to play some of this. It's 6 minutes long. We always, first of all, we don't play the music because we don't want to risk getting a copyright. And number two, we're not going to play the whole thing because the original pilot and creator obviously deserves the views. There's a link to this down in the video description. But let's take a look at this and we'll get a reaction. Okay. Wow, that's rough. Shaky. What is he going to do? What is he doing? What are you doing? Okay. Well, that's wow. Is this the actual footage or is this faked? Wow.
This is actual
beautiful.
footage from his drones. He has 2 drones he uses to do this.
Is he flying it underwater?
Yeah, he has a deep designs drone. I think this is like reverse footage of him flying underwater.
Sure.
He has a deep designs drone and a Hydro H drone from Dex Models.
And it's literally a quad that he flies underwater? Or is it like a boat or a submarine?
It's a quad. He has 2 quads that he flies
The
underwater.
fuck you say? What?
And he's been like
hell?
dialing him to get this to work for a while. He said
I
he
can't
went to a ton
imagine.
of them and like.
What the? Are you kidding me? He flew it. Wow. Wow. All
Great
right.
editing too. Wonderful.
Oh
editing.
yeah. I'm not even listening to the music. Okay. Okay, well, I'm going to pause it there. Because everybody probably wants to see a lot more. I want to finish watching it. But you're right. That's unreal. That underwater footage, I assumed it wasn't a quad. I assumed it was like handheld or a submersible.
And we've seen, so the Deep Designs guy did a little bit of advertising with one where he was flying it underwater and did a little bit of demoing with it, but I've definitely never seen anybody like take that and build a cinematic video out of it. This is a really cool idea. 6 minutes long. It's called Flywater. Definitely really cool blaster. Much credit to him. We've got that link in the show notes. Yeah. Cool stuff.
Yeah, okay. People are saying show the end. I'm not going to show the end, but apparently you need to go watch the end. I want him to get the views and get the links. He deserves them. So, amazing. That's amazing. That's truly novel, is the flying underwater and then flying out of the water. I don't know how you do that. That's amazing. It's incredible.
Well, and then it's like another element, right? So then you can start learning to build it into lines or fly certain places with it, and like he's doing, like mess around at waterfalls and fly underwater features, and yeah, very cool.
How does he get the radio link to not fail safe when he's underwater?
Well, I think so far in all those we saw, he was like right there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He was like real close to the surface. So
okay,
I imagine that's part of it.
It's pretty. Yeah. That's pretty damn cool. All right, we got a couple. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I'll just say I know there's people doing submarines with our links as well. They're just like finicky. You have to kind of figure them out and dial them in and stuff. But I know saw a guy doing ELRS 900, I think, with a submarine. So
okay,
yeah.
We got a couple community spotlights next. Where's my community spotlight title? There we go.
All right.
The first one is from Johnny5. If you watched Johnny's videos and you know about the Houston Night Spot, the Houston Night Spot has been built in Velocidrone. Somebody modeled it in Velocidrone. Super cool when people model real-world environments in simulators so everybody can fly them. Let's see here.
Yeah, Boner created this one. Some people know Boner from his tracks on Velocidrone, but yeah, he created this one.
Nice. Oh, well, it's properly dark. I can't see where the hell I'm going. Is there a version where the lights turn on and I can see where I'm going, or is that just part of the fun?
I think there's a light version as well.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe if you know the site really well, you. I think a lot of people really underestimate the stupendous amount of time it takes to build a 3D environment like this. I know that the liftoff teams spent something like 2 months building the level for my house, if my memory is correct. And there was one artist who did nothing but build the house and for the whole time. And then the rest of the people were working on the rest of the level. So for one person to just turn this out is an extraordinary amount of work. And pretty cool that users of Velocidrone can now get this. Oh, there's the daytime version. Okay, fantastic. Yeah. Anyway, that's really cool. So thank you to Boner and thanks to Johnny5 for making this possible. What's next? We got another one.
All right. Next up, we've got Walksnail.help, which is a friendly website I was shared by user Jaap or Jappy Jan. Yeah, he's got a nice little handy website here for you with some just information about Walksnail. If you need firmware links, he's got that double firmware link or the official one. He's got wiring stuff, 3D printing, STLs, and all kinds of different stuff there. So
nice.
It's a quick reference if you need some Walksnail help.
This is not official from Walksnail, is it? Is this a
Not
community
official.
website?
Not official. It's a community-built website.
Okay, nice. Walksnail.help.
Right.
That's always
And
really
Jaap.
cool. And what
Yeah.
every website needs is a dark mode. So good. We'll stick to that. There's one more here. I saw this. I am active on Reddit. It's one of the social sites I actually frequent more than others. And I ran across this and thought it was so gosh darn touching and heartwarming that I wanted to make it part of the news, the community spotlight. My dad and I created Inav firmware for the Beta FPV F4 SX1280 target. So one of the things people want is the ability to run Inav on these little whoop boards. Why do people want that? I don't know, but they do. And this father and son team sat down and ported Inav to this target. It's not quite as good as you would hope because it turns out that the built-in ExpressLRS receiver isn't supported by Inav yet. So when I first saw it, I was like, whoa, oh, how cool. It supports the built-in SPI receiver. That's amazing. No. So you will need a third-party receiver of some kind, but super, super cool that a father and son team did this, and I thought I'd share it with the world as a result.
Also, I don't think there's any maliciousness involved or any intentionality, but they do point out in the comments that the source code is not available for this, which is a GPL violation. It's a kid and his dad. I don't think anybody meant to do that, but it would be nice for them to share the source code.
Oh, I
instead
see.
of just
They're
hex
just
file.
releasing the hex, not the source. Yeah, no, they need to do a pull request, right? They need to pull request that shit back.
They seem confused about, yes. But yeah, I agree. But just pointing that out. So.
Okay, well, I think we're probably willing to. I'm personally willing to let this one slide.
Yeah.
But technically, they should release the source code as part of it.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess that they don't know a lot about GitHub, and they just downloaded it and messed with it until they got it to work.
Someone in the comments said at least put it in a file in your Google Drive, so it's just available somewhere, so people can get it if they need it. But yeah, super cool to see that father and son working on firmware. It's kind of cool.
I'm a big fan of father-son project. As a father who has a son, when I see other people having a good relationship with their kid and spending time together, and then I go, why not me? But anyway.
All right. That's going to do it.
Are we done? No, we're not done.
Right?
We can't be done yet.
Okay.
We have to read the super chats. Yes.
That's right.
Super chats. D. Wallace, thank you for a $5 super chat. Mike Jonah, thank you for £5. Mike would like to say quickly that Joshua has gone out of his way to help me, and I am so grateful. Wow, that Joshua guy. I don't know who he is, but thank you, Mike, for calling him out. Flow State FPV, thank you for $349 New Zealand dollars, giving us a pointer up there, I guess, about to the message about me helping. I don't know. Flow State FPV, I would like to point out that we have a trademark on that name. Now you're going to need to change your name. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. Thank you guys for the super chats and for coming out to the live stream. We will see you next week.
Take it easy, guys. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. Bye, everybody. All right.